first guest is a psychotherapist. His name is Adam Knowles, PhD candidate. And my first question, I can't wait, because we get the blogs, he looks a bit too handsome, to be honest with you. And he says, I'm an existential psychotherapist. I am so going there. I am so going there, everybody. Don't think I'm not. Right. So here we go. Here we go there. Hello, Adam. How are you?
Hi, Russ. I'm good, thanks. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam.
You're looking very cash there. I like that. You're looking very. Are we supposed to? Are we interpreting your body language?
Serious space, I think.
No, I'm just wondering if we're interpreting your body language here. Right. When I was sent by our terrific producer Sinner the show notes, right? I'm just going to read this, because I read this and I thought, I can't wait to get this guy on, because I got no idea what I've just read. I'm an existential psychotherapist researching the Amazonian plant medicine. Oh, God, I can't pronounce this. Ayahuasca, as good as I'm going to get. Right. I have no idea. I read that and I thought, I haven't a clue what I've just read there. So walk us through it. What does it mean?
What, the existential bit or the ayahuasca bit?
Everything. Every damn thing. I didn't understand a word of it. I got as far as I am, and then I was totally lost.
That's good feedback. Maybe I need to refine that a bit.
Well, I thought, it's impressive, but I don't have a clue what it is.
Well, I'll start with the ayahuasca bit. I mean, so traditional Amazonian plant medicine, it's a psychedelic brew, as in it's a tea made from plants that tends to induce visions. Some call them hallucinations. You normally take it in a ritual setting. Often it comes from an Amazonian setting, traditional indigenous use, and people take it for insight and well-being. And I'm researching it on my PhD.
I'm sorry, they take it. I couldn't hear you properly. It's me with my 20 years in a small plane. My hearing is crap. They take it for what? Insight
and well-being.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess that's one of the main things that, I exist in a world where this is quite well known. So maybe being here and talking to someone that's perhaps not heard of it before, I need to think about how to translate it, because it's. Some would call it a very strong drug. It has DMT in it, but mostly it's not talked about using those words.
Assume that Alex and I have no medical knowledge at all. You won't be far wrong, right? We don't understand anything about the compounds of these things. No.
I'm not a medical expert. My knowledge isn't about the biology of the plants or bodies. As a psychotherapist, my expertise, to the extent I have any, is in the psyche. It's in you could translate that as soul, but really overall sense of health, of sense of doing all right, of being okay. Some of the stuff you guys have just been talking about.
But DMT is a hallucinogenic drug, though, isn't it?
It is, but I think it can be a bit reductionist to take ayahuasca as a ritual that contains a substance, and then so you've got the ritual, then you've got the tea, and one component of that tea is DMT. So I don't tend to talk about the DMT alone, because that's just one of a number of things that's involved.
Yeah.
What do you mean by existential psychotherapist? That was the phrase. I loved that phrase so much. It's been bouncing around in my head for the last 24 hours. And I thought, I can't wait for this guy.
What do you like about it, Russ?
It's just out there, isn't it? Because most people, you could just say, well, hi, Adam, what are you? I'm an existential psychotherapist. And most people go, I'm a butcher. How do you, because they're too scared to ask. Alex and I, we just leap in. Like, what the hell does that mean? So what does it mean?
It tends to have one of those two responses. Either people just do not want to know, or they really want to know. So
I really want to know.
Oh, we really want to know.
It's I suspect you're interested in it, guys, because it's questions of existence. It's questions of life and death. What a lot, you're just talking about suicide. This is going on for people more than most like to admit. And what I am offering as an existential psychotherapist is an opportunity to come and talk about matters of life and death, things that really matter, questions of existence, what is going on, what meaning to make of it, how to cope with it, anything to, the fact that we're aware of that we will not be alive for very long and that we didn't ask to come here, and how to bear that is not talked about very often, and that's something that I try to provide a space for.
Which aspect, you are touching on a lot of stuff which I think about a lot, in all seriousness, apart from your crazy tea. But the whole thing about we didn't ask to be here it fascinates me, because you didn't have a choice. You didn't ask to be born. You're there. Get over it, and you got to make and my view is you got to make the best of it. Can I ask you a silly question? Well, to me, it's a silly question, but it's something which has always been at the center of my life. A lot of people, Adam, go through life thinking, I have a right to be happy. I have a right to be happy. It's not written anywhere that you have a right to anything. You're born. It's kind of up to you what you're going to do with it. And I've never believed you have a right. You have a right to breathe. It's kind of it. You don't have a right per se to be happy. It's up to you whether you're happy or not. Am I completely off key here?
No, I think I would agree with you. Rights and duties always go together. Rights and responsibilities. I think you've got a responsibility to yourself to have some approach to it. And Ruby Wax said in her stage show, she says, your body's made of billions of different cells, and they've got this kind of working agreement to keep you alive, but they're not at all interested in keeping you happy. That's not part of their contract. So that's up to your consciousness, and that's the key part.
What did you think of her show? I wanted to walk out. What did you think? I saw it as a work in progress. We bought tickets. I went with my partner. We bought tickets, which were not cheap, and I got so angry, and I had to analyze afterwards why I was so angry, and then I calmed down and I worked out why I came out of it. I came out of it in a fury, as a matter of fact, an absolute fury.
About what?
Well, it takes it away from you. I don't want to. I'll answer the question, but I really want it to be about. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because Ruby was on there with who I kind of like. I've never met her, but I get what she's doing. And she had two people with her. One was a doctor, sort of psychotherapist, and one was a monk, young guy who was a monk, and the bit that set me off the deep end was that he said, yes, I spent 4 years thinking about, he had one little subject, and I spent 4 years. And I thought, yeah, matey, you spent 4 years in a cell or whatever you were doing thinking about this, because you didn't have to worry about putting food on the table. You didn't have a family. You didn't have to pay a mortgage. You didn't have to pay rent, everything. And I got really, everybody would like the luxury of being able to say, I'm going to think about this for 4 years. Just pants. I thought it was so unrealistic. And I think what annoyed me about the show, Adam, honestly, if I would say this to Ruby as well, Ruby, like I know her, it came across as really smug. Yeah. It came across as really, we know what we're doing. Yeah. And it just smug. And I thought, Ruby, you're a comedian. You haven't really got the qualifications. And these two jokers, one of them was and I think the other thing, and my partner agreed with me, that the egos up there were just, I don't know how they kept it. We were in the Museum of Comedy. I don't know how the walls contained the three egos up there. I couldn't wait to leave. There you go. That was me. There we are. That's my little rant for the day. There you go.
Back to you, Adam. Oh, sorry, go on.
Go on, Alex, go on.
I've just wanted to, I'm intrigued by what you do, actually, because I work with people in business, mental health and wellbeing, and try and get them to talk about how they're feeling in the workplace. When you do your existential psychotherapying, you don't always do it with the tea, presumably. They are not inextricably linked, are they?
I never do it with the tea. No, they're two separate strands.
Okay, so that's
we
what...
both completely. Sorry, Adam. We both. I hadn't even discussed this with Alex. I've completely misunderstood. I'm sorry. I thought this was this is the way that my writer's head. We come and see you. We have this tea. We discover that we're actually a panther or something fabulous, and that's our spirit. I don't know. Maybe I've seen too many movies. That's what I thought it was. Sorry,
So one thing is your psychotherapy. One thing is your psychotherapy. The other thing is what you're studying, presumably, and researching. Okay, got it.
Yeah, all right. And they're both in pursuit of the same thing, which is, this existential question. And you're right, Russ. That is the ayahuasca experience, that you might become a jaguar or something. Yeah. But then the psychotherapy is to talk about that afterwards, what it means to you, why that happened, what you make of it.
So, what got? I'm really fascinated because it's a very niche thing. What got you in? We'll come back to the psychotherapy in a minute. What got you into this tea? I'm using the word tea because I can't pronounce the plant. I hope you gathered that. I'm going to feel so stupid because I can't pronounce it.
No, it's absolutely. You pronounce it perfectly, by the way. Ayahuasca. It's a
well done, Russ.
But lucky guess.
Tea is fine. How did I get into it?
Yeah.
I come from Manchester originally, as you might detect from my accent. I come from a place where speaking on men's radio, I was thinking about this, that it's a place where blokes don't particularly talk about feelings. There's no real great depth of kind of mateship or, talking about what really matters. It's kind of, you might go down the pub, you might play a game of pool or darts or something. And so for me, I was quite emotionally, not very emotionally intelligent, I suppose. I wasn't really taught that by my school or my family in some ways. It's all quite, tricky. And so for me...
Because you're very hardcore. I'm joking aside, but Manchester, you're all Liam Noel Gallagher, aren't you? Like, you're all hardcore.
Man City, you're Man United.
That's it. Well, it's the end of that
all the time at school. And I was thinking, I don't even care about football. I don't even know what it is. I was growing up as a gay guy in an all-boys school. And you're just thinking, and there's no one to talk to about anything that you're going through. And it's quite isolating. And the idea of talking like with you guys, with you, Russ, or you, Alex, in a kind of informed and sympathetic and compassionate way, which is what I hope to offer as a psychotherapist, was totally unavailable to me for the first 30 years of my life before I discovered A, ayahuasca, and B, psychotherapy. And both those things are what my life's now about.
And how did you come across it? Was it in a book or just your studies, or how?
No, I was introduced to it by a boyfriend who was much more spiritually aligned than I was. I was very atheist, very scientific, studied physics at A-level, all this. And a boyfriend introduced me to, first of all, the concept, and then accompanied me to a ceremony where I took it, and nothing was ever quite the same again.
I'm absolutely... I've got to ask, I know Alex is chomping on the bit to ask the same question.
Go on.
What happens when you... I'm fascinated by this, having watched so many movies. What happens when you take the tea?
Well, all I can tell you is what happened for me. I've done
that's fine. That's
ceremonies. But no, that's not true. I've also read a lot of accounts of people taking ayahuasca, and it tends to have it's something that lasts 4 to 6 hours generally. The height of the effects are after about an hour. And there's quite a fast takeoff of about 10 minutes. And, you have visual effects, you have auditory effects of you hear things that you're not sure are happening, you interpret things differently. And then there's kind of various degrees of journey that you could then go on over the course of those hours, generally guided by a shaman or by songs and music. And there's various things that can happen. You might imagine turning into an animal, as you said. You might do a tour of all the relationships that you're in, with your mother, your father, your uncle, and meet them, or dead grandparents, etc. And then you might get to talk to them. It's very like a dream, really. It's like a dream, like a lucid dream, but very heightened, and it's sort of more real than real.
Presumably, you have to do this in a safe place. I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks, Alex. It deserves saying that this is one of the strongest hallucinogenics known to mankind in DMT. It's not something to play with. It's not something to take yourself and dose yourself without supervision, without expertise around, without hospital facilities, really. So I always advise doing it in a group with experienced people and legally.
Is it not illegal in America at the moment still?
It has
some places.
It's legal in religious contexts.
Okay.
Under Santo Daime, it's sometimes legal, but mostly not.
Okay.
I'm with one of our regular listeners, writer and film director Sen Munro, who says, "Sounds scary. It would scare the crap out of me. This is. I'll be honest with you, Adam. This would be my nightmare. I would hate it. Yeah, I'd hate it.
I mean, if you imagine being faced with whatever your personal worst fears and what your vision of hell would be, then you'll get to experience that. But you'll also get to survive it, and that's quite.
I was 9 years at boarding school. I know what hell looks like.
So does it? I'm going to be a bit technical here. Unlock the psychological condition in your mind. Then is that what it's doing?
I think broadly, I'd have to agree with that the research, Alex, suggests that it increases flexibility. I was glancing at a report this morning that said it increased psychedelics, including ayahuasca. So there's psilocybin mushrooms, there's MDMA, there's ketamine. That what they tend to do, what's thematic across them, is that they increase cognitive flexibility and sort of your ability to bear distressing situations.
So how does it work if you're trying to unlock someone's inner consciousness in terms of depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts? How if you go through this 4-hour journey, how is that then used? Because that's what we're all about, to help people with their mental health issues. How does it work?
I've heard it described as some fresh snow on some very well-worn tracks. So if you look at the brain scans, they sort of support this view that minds get stuck, even just people, just get stuck in habitual ways of everything's negative, no one's ever nice to me, I can't do anything, and they're just stuck. And you can tell them, no, you're great, you have everything over, but it never sinks in. What ayahuasca does is kind of suspends that typical way of thinking, those ruts that people get stuck in, and neurologically it seems to connect bits of the brain that weren't talking to each other and give you a sense of a chance to rearrange things before they settle back down again.
So presumably, do you only have to do this once, or do you have to keep doing it?
This is a question unanswered by research, I have to acknowledge that. For me, I think the difference between 0 and 1 is bigger than the difference between 1 and 1,000. Sort of, that's how I characterize it, at least.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that.
Adam, you've lost me. What does that mean?
What I mean is that taking it once versus never having taken it seems to unlock something that means that you can take it again, but then that's more maintenance, or it's furthering, or it's deepening. But the first experience, going from not having taken it to taking it, and I'm talking about all psychedelics here rather than necessarily just ayahuasca, that it unlocks a different perspective, which the research participants I've spoken to have found terrifying, but also helpful.
So whereas an antidepressant depresses your feelings, which is how they work, this expresses your feelings. I'm trying to find the difference between the two.
It's sort of, I think it's important to say, Alex, that it just doesn't operate, in my view. As I say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but my reading of the research suggests it doesn't work at all in the same way as an antidepressant, an SSRI or something like that. It's just not mechanical. Like someone with diabetes might take insulin and it's kind of rebalancing a chemical in their body. Ayahuasca just doesn't work like that. It's an experience, just like an experience at the theatre or an experience of a painting might change your life because you suddenly realise something. It's much more like that.
But Adam, I've got comments coming in, which I'll read in a second, or Alex will. Let me put this point to you. All right. One of my closest friends, we've been friends since school, his son took LSD. I'm not going to say who it is, but if he's listening, you're one of my best friends. His son took LSD. It destroyed his life. because whatever happened during that trip, or whatever word you want to use, that experience, it remapped his brain. He has never been right for the last 30 years. He's never been able to lead a normal life. And I speak, I just put my cards on the table. I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs, not from a moral viewpoint. It doesn't interest me.
You don't drink caffeine or?
Well, yes, of course. When you say I don't drink, all right, we can get around semantics.
Well, it's not semantics.
Like.
What I'm saying is that our bodies require chemical substances all day, every day. It's just the labels that we use for them.
Yeah, but the thing is this, right? I mean, let's be serious for a sec. I've just had 2 espressos, right? So I can have 2 espressos, and when the show's finished, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go somewhere and have a sandwich and walk the dog, right? I'm going to be perfectly capable of doing that. If I drop acid, I am not going to go get into my little car and start driving and trying to walk my dog. I mean, there's a world of difference.
If you took ayahuasca, you'd be able to after about 6 hours.
Yeah, but I can have a coffee and I'm fine. I mean, yeah, but would I be? Would I come out as the same person if I took that stuff? Sam Monroe's got a really he puts it in a lighthearted way because he's a scriptwriter. But let me just give you this perspective, and I'm with Sen on this. Ed Grossman, first of all, who says, "Excuse me, what are you taking?" LSD? That's his first question. Then Stan Monroe comes in and says, I respect Adam's point of view, but I don't think I could cope with 6 hours of meeting my demons like this. Ex-girlfriends, bosses, animals, sounds like a 6-hour hell-like roller coaster, and I have a fairly open mind. Sen, I suspect, and I'm not usually prescriptive about this, but I suspect Sen is kind of echoing the feelings of like, I wouldn't touch, I wouldn't touch that. I wouldn't touch that. Be honest with you.
But this is why I asked if it was always in a controlled environment, because this is clearly something that you take LSD or heroin or any kind of heavy drug. Not where you are being controlled and where you need to figure out what's going to happen afterwards. You just do it, and this is very different. Looking at it from your point of view, and I understand that you're researching it, so you've got a long way to go, I would imagine, to find out how and why and all the bits in between.
Maybe not that far, but you're right. No? There are safe protocols for taking very strong drugs, and that includes prescription drugs and these psychedelic ones that are on the frontier. But it's important that, although I have clients who have a similar experience to you, Russ, of this person you're talking about, of a high dose of LSD in a festival setting, let's say, or something highly inappropriate, and it's traumatized them and they've never been the same, and it's ruined their lives. Of course, that happens. And there's other people like your commentator who isn't at all up for ayahuasca, so don't take it. It's really is not for everybody, but for certain people it is, and they can take it in a safe and appropriate way.
Is it taken as a leisure drug as well? Because we're talking about it in a context of mental health and well-being and psychotherapy.
Not ayahuasca, LSD, DMT even, but I've never heard of it being taken because you vomit, you go to the toilet a lot, because of the physiological effects. You might not get much visions out of it. It can be quite individual. Then I've never heard of it being taken for fun in that sense. Okay,
I just wanted to clear that we're not talking about recreational drug taking here. We're talking about something that can enhance someone's ability to sort of open up their mind and find a better place at the end of it. It's
a medicine. That's why I call it a plant medicine. It's not something, you only take medicine if you're ill. There's something you're trying to deal with that you can't deal with in another way.
Now, here's a question, Adam, wearing your sort of medical hat, so to speak, from Zebedee Franklin. Isn't there I'm reading these because this is what our listeners want to know. Isn't there a danger of adding another layer of trauma to the body by subscribing to psychedelics?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have a medical hat, by the way, just to be clear.
Oh, well,
keep saying that.
you're a psychotherapist. So you're a psychotherapist.
As a qualified psychotherapist, could people be traumatized by it? Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I've been traumatized by my psychedelic experiences. But just like other traumas, you talk it through, you work with it. So why would you choose to be traumatized? Well, that's a tricky one, and for some people, it's highly inappropriate.
Simon Buckman, who's writing a load. Simon wasn't writing half a book here, but thank you, Simon. Ask Adam. You see, you've caused. You put your hand in a hornet's nest. People are very interested. People are very interested in this. So the reason there's so much interaction is because it's it's interesting stuff, which is why you're a good guest. Ask Adam if he's read any Carlos Castaneda takes of a Hopi Indian. That might mean something to you. It means nothing to me.
Yeah, the name's very familiar. Yeah, I can't remember anything specific I've read by Castaneda. It's a classic text, though, I think. And yeah, it's kind of it's there in the pantheon of psychedelic literature. But I don't know if there's something specific from that he wants to pick up on.
Okay. And
previously he said all hallucinogenics need to be taken in controlled, supervised circumstances.
Yeah.
What Adam is talking about is ayahuasca and microdosing, which I've never heard of microdosing before, which can be a different form, different from weekend raving on an amateurish and foolhardy way. Okay.
Yeah.
Cary Grant and Timothy Leary were big bands.
It's very difficult to take ayahuasca in anything other than a controlled setting because someone has to make the brew, and it's not that easy.
Now, let's move away from this for a minute because I know everyone's going to drag us back to it because it's controversial and it's interesting and it's kind of it's scary and it's kind of fascinating at the same time. So, would I do it? I'd be terrified. I'll be honest. Knowing Alex for 35 years, she'd be standing behind me because she'd be even more terrified and she doesn't scare easily.
I'm still terrified, by the way.
No, are you though? When was the last?
I assumed it would get easier. It doesn't.
So, I know this sounds like a blindingly obvious question. If it's this scary, and it's not getting any easier, why? And please feel free to just say piss off. I don't want to answer the question. It's not Radio 4. You have carte blanche. It's not a problem. We say that to all our guests. Why do you do it? Why put yourself through it?
It's worth it. It's terrifying, but worth it. And that's what my research participants said as well. That and as an existential therapist, a lot of what my basic standpoint is life is hard. Life is difficult. It's difficult being alive. It's difficult being a man. It's difficult being a woman in 2020 with all this stuff going on. Yeah. It's really, really hard. And yet you've got to find a way to survive, to thrive, to get through it, to even enjoy it. And that is an experience in microcosm that you have in the ayahuasca experience.
You see, now I'm not being. We've never met before. We've never spoken before. But so you don't know me any more than I know you. But I'm finding this conversation absolutely riveting. But if you say that, and I'm not being facetious, but bear with me on this. But I get pleasure because the way that I resolve my life with these big existential questions is it comes back to a silly saying somebody once said to me, which has really guided me, and it's, how do you eat an elephant? And I went, what? How do you eat an elephant? And the answer is, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. In other words, if you look at life and you go, Jesus, you're never going to get through it. You got to dice it, slice it, and in little doses. And I get my pleasure from little things. I don't need the big things anymore. I've done all that. Yeah. It's fine. So, just taking Madam out for a WALK. I can't say the word. She's just over there. And if I take her out for a WALK, and, and I'm listening to my latest, whatever the book is that I'm listening to, I'm really happy. I don't have to go off and microdose anything or whatever. And I will agree with you because I know what you're going to come back with. And I have no argument with this, Adam. Yeah, vodka and ice. or a martini. That's about as that's about as druggy as I get, and and I'm happy. It puts me in a good mood, and that's fine. But I've learned these little things. Is that part of your psychotherapy with these huge existential questions? Because they're gigantic to deal with.
Yeah, I think you're right, Russ. I mean, what I do on a daily basis is more that step-by-step work with people, just one step at a time, and it's all very subtle changes over sometimes years. But I think some people have been putting one foot in front of the other and have arrived, maybe 40, 50 years old in a place they really, really don't like. And it's then that ayahuasca might be, or psychedelics might be indicated, let's say, where they need a radical answer to a radical problem, a substantial answer to a substantial problem that they just can't shake via anything else they've tried. And that's what the hope, that's why psychedelics has been researched so heavily. There's no real knowledge or answers at the moment. There's lots of clinical trials going on. But to see if it has this potential to help people who are quite stuck. It sounds like you're not stuck, Russ, and you found your way. There are many ways up the mountain. Psychedelics is just one of them. And all I'm saying is, could we at least consider it without the dogma around it, without the stigma, and just kind of objectively and kind of say, well, there might be something here that's worth looking at?
I think, well, look, I think you have to try. I've got to be quite careful about it. I feel I'm walking on eggshells. Not just with you, but with a lot of the listeners who are some of them getting really quite steamed up, and some of them are going along with it. Is this you have to try and look at you have to try and look at everything to advance and help the human condition. I'm so concerned about the use of psychedelic drugs. That is just me. On the other side, Adam, on the other side, when I think about all my favorite music, I feel a complete charlatan. I feel a hypocrite in this regard, because when I look back on all my favorite music, these people are off their faces half the time, and the music's fantastic. Could they have created such brilliant music if they weren't off their faces? I don't know. I don't write music. And I've avoided drugs. Don't forget I came through the 60s. I've avoided them like the plague. But that's just me. But do I enjoy the result of somebody else? I got to say yes.
But that's also slightly different, because we're looking at how, and I don't know if I agree with it or not. I'm not a drug user, and it scares the living bejesus out of me, quite frankly. But we're talking about a hallucinogenic, unlocking someone's psyche to help them with their mental health. Typically, a client that's doing that, are they someone that's taken drugs before? Just out of interest?
Often not, actually. Yeah, often not. If they're taking it in a sort of medicalised setting, such as the psilocybin trial at King's College, they are often, they've, like me actually, have avoided. I've never taken heroin. I've never taken cocaine. You're kind of being a good boy. You kind of follow the just say no policy of the Grange Hill in the 80s. So they can be kind of drugs naive. So
typically, what are the conditions of, and I'm sure you can't talk about clients specifically, but typically, what are the conditions of the clients that you work with that want existential psychotherapy rather than psychotherapy? I'm not quite sure I know the difference between the two, actually, because a psychotherapist still tries to do step by step and bring out what's inside the mind. So that's like three questions in one, sorry.
I love it. No, I mean, what's distinctive about existential psychotherapy? I'd say what's distinctive about it is that, it's non-directive. I'm not trying to do anything to anybody. People come to consult me and we talk. It's a non-medical, and it's just a conversation. It's trying to get clearer on things. In a way that might sound like not very much. Why is it worth paying £90 an hour for that? But my experience is that if people do that week on week, they do make substantial progress on the things that are bothering them. They get clearer on it, and they're able to live differently and happier lives. If the question is about why people, generally, ayahuasca has been researched for things like depression and anxiety, sometimes eating disorders, sometimes addiction as well. So the idea of using a drug to treat drugs addiction seems really weird to some people, but the evidence suggests that there might be something in it.
So is all this...
Sorry, go on.
No, Alec, go on.
I was just going to say that right at the beginning, we also established that it's not really legal.
It's
so it's not something.
It's legal to take it in Peru and Costa Rica and Ecuador and places like that. There are legal ceremonies.
We don't live there. We live here. But it's not on the NHS. It's not something someone's going to prescribe. But presumably the research, which I'm really interested in why there is research and money being put into it, is that so that we can find out if it is actually a viable way and solution for some people who are really struggling.
Yes.
And then it to be a drug that will be on the NHS or...
Yeah. I mean, there are already NHS-funded or NIHR-funded trials into magic mushrooms and ketamine.
Okay.
The team that I'm associated with at King's College are investigating these things.
We're both in shock.
Why?
Right.
If I'm absolutely, I'm stunned. I'm sorry, it's rare that I shut up, but I'm like, what the? The NHS are looking into ketamine.
Yeah.
For what?
Christ.
For depression.
Really?
Yeah, and never mind the NHS. I mean, this will really blow your mind. Then in America, there are third stage phase 3 trials, and that's the last phase of trials under the Food and Drugs Administration for MDMA therapy.
Let me read you this.
Oh, go on, you read it.
There's some extraordinary things. So. Right, this is from Françoise Pascal, very, very well-known, beautiful actress, a regular to the show. This is just ghastly. When I lost my son to his father in the early 80s, I left for LA as I thought I had nothing left for me in the UK. Whilst in LA, I got hooked on cocaine, as it was a drug that made me forget my troubles. But when I came down from the high, I still felt the same. So drugs are not the answer to solve or escape a problem. The problem will still be there unless you get help. And can I just add to Françoise, I didn't know, and bless you for sharing that. This is from Ken Elm Janur. Ken Elm is was one of the top Fleet Street journalists and knew everybody. He's a heavy duty guy. Let me just read this, and it links in with François' point. During my years in LA, I was at a showbiz party where an acquaintance blew his brains out playing Russian roulette. Everyone thought the gun was not loaded and he was just trying to get attention by putting it against his head. Oh my God. Police arrived, questioned all present, searched the Malibu house and found bags of cocaine hidden all over. The verdict later was misadventure, but all these years later, I'm not convinced. I'm not quite sure I understand the rest of it. It says a squad cop once told me that what happened was part of daily life. So both of those, Ken Elm's comments and Françoise Pascal's comments are really saying that drugs are not the answer.
Yeah.
My mind's going whirring at the moment because if the NHS is spending money on ketamine drug tests, we said earlier on before you came on talking about how there's not enough money to put into mental health and well-being and get people more aware of what's going on. It seems to me that money's going in the wrong place. Shoot me for saying that, but there's not enough awareness out there. There's not enough awareness of men's mental health. I mean, it's not being really pushed. It's been pushed by Russ. I know the Samaritans. There's something missing somewhere, and yet I've now learned that the NHS are spending budget on ketamine, and
because
it doesn't seem right.
The prospect is that this could be a breakthrough treatment.
But until we can get
cost effective,
until we get people to start talking about their own mental health issues and stop the stigma for men, quite frankly, and Russ knows I work with a lot of men in business. I do mental health and well-being in the workplace, and the stigma is bloody awful. You need to start at the beginning of it, change the way people think about how you talk about mental health, that there is no stigma for anyone talking about their worries, particularly in the workplace, which is a very difficult place to be if you're struggling. surely there should be more money put into that. I mean, I know you're not in the NHS. I'm sorry to attack you on this. It's not really you I'm attacking at all, but
it just shouldn't be either or. It shouldn't be one thing or the other. There should be money for both. You'll find no argument from me, Alex, of funding talking therapies more. But one thing that's worth me saying is that the protocols for MDMA for PTSD, soldiers coming back from Afghanistan, they've got PTSD, MDMA being tested for helping them in America, and it always comes with talking therapy. So these things go together. They have a talking therapist and the psychedelic treatment.
Let me ask you this, if I may, Adam, and I'm changing the subject just a little bit, but I'd like your psychotherapy view on this.
Sure.
We're going through this horrendous COVID situation. There really isn't a end in sight. In my own view, I think this is a 2 to 3 year program, and I think this is the new reality that we're living in. And they'll get a vaccine, and eventually, like when you get your flu jab, you'll get your COVID jab, and that's how we'll deal with it. I guess I'm not medical, but that's how I see it. That's how I see it panning out over the next 2-3 years. Have you noticed people? You're doing existential therapy. People now are having to really face their own problems because they can't get out to work. They can't go to the office. They're not going to a studio. All of those things have gone. Is it putting a lot of pressure on people that you're noticing as a direct result?
Well, there's certainly been an increase in inquiries for psychotherapy that have been coming my way, certainly since the end of lockdown. So this kind of looming crisis of a surge of problems for people seems to be real. But for some people prefer lockdown, and some people it's made it worse. So I've seen both sides of that. Some people quite like not having, if they've got social anxiety, for instance, not having to go to work is quite good for them.
Yeah, I've had conversations. Russ will know who I'm talking about. Andy Bibby of a startup company called 87%. That it's an app for people in business to assess their mental health and well-being. He has said his findings recently are that a lot of people who have suffered or do suffer with mental health issues are feeling so much better just being at home because they're not in that work environment where they feel they have to hide who they are. So you're absolutely right. And there, of course, there are other people who have struggled so terribly that it's horses. In very individual feelings are coming out of this.
Adam, good question in from Kimmy Lashmar. Hi, Kimmy. So if soldiers, police, etc., who suffer from witnessing traumatic situations, will this numb their suffering?
It's the opposite. The advice that's given to people, let's say soldiers or police or firefighters, anybody that experiences trauma as part of their job, let's say, it's in and through. It's always in and through. So it's the opposite of a lot of drugs like cocaine or even recreational drugs that are an escape from. The psychedelic drugs tend to be the opposite. They tend to be a deep dive into, contact with. And this goes back to the point from you before, Alex, that they seem to allow, and this is my experience, resonates with this, they allow you to be in contact with something that's really desperately uncomfortable for longer and to sit with it and to tolerate it a bit better. So it's not an avoidance in my understanding of the literature and people's experiences.
Adam, before you go, if people want to get hold of you, I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
And the reaction on the reaction on the right hand side of the screen is like boom! It's like an explosion there, right? You're nothing if not an interesting, controversial figure. Adam, if people want to get hold of you, etc., how do they plug it away? Go on.
Yeah, well, so I run ayaresearch.com, ayaresearch.com. That's the main site to keep up to date with the ayahuasca research that I'm doing. There's a contact form on there if you want to get in touch with me. I field a lot of inquiries, but it's always interesting to hear from people. I don't want, I'm not promoting anything. I'm not suggesting anybody should run down and take it or phone up somebody and try and get hold of it. Please don't contact me if you're looking for an experience like that. I'm not offering that. But if you're interested in the serious, rigorous scientific research, which is what I'm talking about, taking this in the right way for the right reasons at the right time with the right people, then get in touch and join the push for that.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
And I'm just going to end on a note. Simon Buckman's been writing volume 3 of his memoirs on the right. Simon, one thing is that you're not shy, and B, you are not minimal in your comments, but it's great. One thing to bear in mind, and cannot be stressed strongly enough, is that the street drugs and clinical doses are very different things. Adam is correct in what he's saying. And now Simon Buckman can meet Ed Grossman in the back of a pub car park and beat the crap out of each other. That's going to be something to witness. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. Stay well, stay safe.
You too, guys.
Okay.
Fascinating.
God bless.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Wow, that was out there.
Yeah, you can't help but get really animated when something different comes out.
It's fascinating stuff, but wow, I mean, the listeners were having, as you know, wildly different, differing opinions. I mean, Ed Grossman, I thought was going to burst through the screen. And Ed, I'm kind of with you. I find it. He was a really nice guy. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a really nice guy. I'm very perplexed by this whole sort of area. So I think you got Ed Grossman on one side saying, I'm going to paraphrase Ed, saying this is just nonsense, and then you got Simon Buckman side of backing it up with his views. Sandra Butler, we love Sandra Butler. She's suffering from thunderstorms at the moment. I've avoided drugs of any sort for my problems. She's got a lot of medical problems, by the way. And I was given some in the 90s by my GP, but they didn't make me feel any better. I felt out of it. Yep, tell me about it. I've taken medication for a neurological neuropathic pain condition, which I'm now off. But some people had side effects from these, which luckily I didn't have. But I'm really glad to get off all medication and do everything naturally. Well, I'm with you, Sandra. If you can, you can. I mean, if you can do it naturally, yeah.
I think for Adam,
go on.
Well, you go.
No.
Okay.
I was just saying.
Adam, okay, you told me to go, and I carried on.
Well, you were too slow.
Okay.
If you snooze, you lose.
For Adam's sake, I think we have to look at him in two ways. One, he's doing research and trying to find out really what is going on with this drug and can it help. And I know he's used it, but on the other side, he's a psychotherapist helping people and listening to their problems and doing it existentially, which I think is great. The drug side of it, let's see what research comes out of it, really. Carry on, Russ.
No, I was going to say that Sen Monroe, those making light of it, because at first he said, yeah, get me some of that tea, yeah. And then he heard what the tea was going to do, and he was like, oh, shit, no, I don't want that tea. You're kidding? Whoa. And now he said, in his usual, well, I'll get some for my upcoming barbecue. Good luck with that. You're going to have 200 people off their faces for 6 hours. Good luck, then. Kimmy
Lashmar has written, it was an eye-opener having him on the show to see another pathway I personally knew nothing about. Neither did we.
Neither did I.
So it's very interesting.
You see those movies. There was a John Borman film, the name of which I've forgotten, but everyone will pile in 10 seconds. Ed. Oh gosh, did you? That's interesting. I'm going to read it out, and if you're still, and if our last guest is still listening, this is Ed's comment. This is not my Russ, Alex. My main objection was his smugness. I didn't. It's funny because I have a sort of a smugometer, which is why I had so much problems with Ruby Wax and her two co-hosts on her show. I came out so angry. But I thought he was just, I didn't sense that, funny enough. I didn't find him smug. And believe me, we've had some smug people on men's radio and women's radio. And you think, really? I didn't see that, but I'm kind of with, it's not something that I put my cards straight on the table. It's not something I wouldn't touch with a barge pole. It would scare me. Because I think we can, how can I put it? If you're looking at, I'm trying to break it down a little bit here, Alex, so I might need some of your intellectual help.
On.
But if you're trying to face your worst nightmares or your worst issues, I would have hoped, and again, I'm not a medical person, but I would have hoped that you could somehow intellectualize it or talk it through and say, through therapy, if necessary, through therapy with someone who really knows what they're doing, and say, and eventually, and it may take a number of years, you will come to the conclusion, I now understand why I feel like that. I now understand what has been bothering me all these years. Now I understand it, and I understand it intellectually. I understand it emotionally. I can deal with it. Francois Pascal, you see, this is what's fascinating. All human life is there, as they used to say in the News of the World. Francois Pascal, I didn't find him smug, just quite intelligent, knew what he was saying. And Simon Buckman, he wasn't smug at all. That's funny, Marcella Guglielmucci saying, sorry I missed the last half hour, ironically due to the nurse practicing calling me about my meds. Yeah, well, don't drink. Are you drinking the tea? Somebody said it sounds quite wacko, as in the Siege of Waco, you know, and that whole drinking the Kool-Aid thing, because that was another matter.
I think being able to go to someone who you can talk to openly and honestly, that isn't a member of your family who has been taught how to listen. I'm not talking about Samaritan, I'm talking about a psychotherapist or a counsellor who can help you open up to start with. Sometimes all you need to do is just open up and talk, and then everything that's driving you crazy is out and you don't feel half as crazy. If you struggle with the way you live your life sometimes, then talking about it and understanding what is giving you those difficulties is also, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, Russ. I think being able to go and talk to a therapist, as you know, both my children have seen therapists for various reasons, and they just both think it's the most wonderful thing and everybody should go.